morning, almost good afternoon. We're going to wait these last couple minutes as people filter in, and then we'll start directly at the top of the hour. Some ground rules. As we are going through the slides, please use the Q&A function to enter in any questions that you have, and my team will be in the background answering those. Any questions that are not answered during the session, we will get answers to and post after the webinar. All right, we have about one more minute until 12 o'clock, at least here on the East Coast. And then we will kick this off. All right, good afternoon or good morning. I'm Captain Amanda Ruby, and I will be hosting the majority of this post-award frequently asked questions webinar. I do have a team of people in the background who will be on the Q&As. So if as we're going through the slides, you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A section and we will get those questions answered. And then as a participant, you can also follow any questions that you have a particular interest in, like them, and then that way you can see the answers as those occur in the Q&A section. You can also use the chat, but it's encouraged to use the Q&A portion. That way we can track all the questions. And then I will also be tossing over some slides to the wonderful Vanessa Perner, who is going to be talking to you about the union platform. And then I also have some contracting officer experts on here who will also be able to speak to any type of contracting questions that might be out there in the audience. So without further ado, I'm going to turn off my video so I don't distract you, and then I'll proceed through the slides. All right, so welcome. This is the third webinar series in our weekly webinar we're going to be discussing post-award frequently asked questions. So for those of you who are select or have received an award, this is going to answer the question of what comes next. And then for anyone who is looking at being a part of this program or maybe did not receive a select, you can also look at some perspective as to your particular situation, as well as what you can do in the future or what comes next. Say if you propose to another solicitation and get a selection. So we'll talk about the different award decisions and then onboarding, what to expect in that. Talk about not just the API platform, but focus areas in general, union, collider events, and then different testing and regulatory stipulations. So let's get to the nitty gritty of what a lot of people are probably here for. What are the different SBIR, STTR award decisions that come out of this program? So we'll go into these in a little bit more detail, but there are 4 general decisions. Select, meaning your proposal will move forward for award processing. Select, but not funded, meaning that proposal qualified for an award, but will not be receiving funds for that specific solicitation. Not selected, meaning that your proposal will not receive an award. And then not selectable, meaning that the proposal had been disqualified for some reason that did not meet the solicitation requirements. So let's talk about this in more detail. So select. Congratulations, your proposal has gone through the evaluation process and made the cut for award consideration. However, being select does not mean you have an award. You still have to go through potential contract clarifications. Also, there will be a review to ensure that your proposal qualifies for SBIR funding. And so going through that award process from select to award, there could be potential changes. A DQ could potentially result from uncovering any additional information that was not uncovered during the evaluation process. So you do not have an actual award until you have a signed contract. So going through the award process, it's only the contracting officer that is able to communicate with the company. Our AFWERX team is not able to provide any insight as far as your particular award status. That is all worked through the contracting officers. Now, if you are select but not funded, that means that your proposal has evaluated to a degree that means that you have met all of the requirements and that you have made the cut for an award consideration, but there's just not funding that extends down to your select status. This is not the end, however. There are still options that you can pursue in order to try to receive an award. First, your SBIR is available for adoption by other Air Force or DoD or government components so that a SBIR award can come out of the fact that you are select. In addition, what we do is we retain your proposal for 180 days from the receipt of your notification. If additional funds become available during that time, what we can do is go back to the select not funded list and start funding some of those and start moving towards awards. Also, because you're select not funded, you're eligible to resubmit your proposal in a later solicitation, and then hopefully you would be select and funded in the future. There is no guarantee. If you're select but not funded, that doesn't guarantee that you will be a select again. It just is another potential opportunity for you to try again with the next solicitation. And then there's not selected. That means your proposal has gone through the evaluation process, but did not make the cut to receive select or to be moving forward for an award. Official notice will be provided to you saying that you were not selected. And then a debrief summary can be offered for the 3 different criteria, Alpha Bravo Charlie, which are commercialization, defense need, and technical merit. Now, this debrief can only come from a contracting officer. You can't reach out to AFWERX or AFVentures or our staff members and ask for a debrief or feedback. That feedback comes in the form of an official debrief, and that can only come from the contracting officer. So when you receive that feedback or that debrief, we encourage you to consider that what was provided to you and try to strengthen that proposal moving forward. And then you are welcome to resubmit to a future solicitation. That being said, when you resubmit, don't submit the same exact proposal. One, you wouldn't want to because it wasn't selected previously. You would want to make iterative improvements. And then two, it also has to be a slightly different R&D component. It's not going to be the exact same scope, and hopefully on the commercial side, you've also made improvements to your product or your technology that you would want to show in your proposal for a future solicitation. And then not selectable. This means that for whatever reason, your proposal did not meet a requirement that was listed in the solicitation. Again, only a contracting officer is able to provide that feedback. Our team, the AFVentures team, AFWERX team, we cannot provide you insight as to why you were disqualified. That has to come from a contracting officer via the debrief. Now, that being said, I can talk about some common disqualifiers, and you can go and look and see if perhaps this met your situation, or you can go and look through your proposal, make sure that these are things that you're catching prior to the submission to make sure that you are not disqualified. So a big one here is having the incorrect cage code, not having a SAM registration, having the wrong SAM registration. Make sure that you check this and that it is accurate. It's a really small detail, but if that is not done correctly, that can and will result in a disqualification. Another is R&D effort. The SBIR program has to be research and development centric. This means that, for example, and there are many examples out there, if you have a product that you're just trying to sell for production, that is not qualified under SBIR. It has to be research and development. You could potentially have a CATS product, but the SBIR award would be for modification of that product and doing additional research and development to improve upon it. So there's a list of different qualifiers for R&D and what needs to be considered for R&D efforts. These are just a couple of examples here. Another is not meeting the minimums. So there's a minimum required for slides. You have to have that minimum slide count. Also, for if there is a white paper that would be required for the phase 2 proposals, you have to have the minimum amount of pages for that white paper. There's also maximum for slides and for pages in the white paper, but if you go over that maximum, it's just not considered. That's not a disqualifying factor. So if a maximum page count is 15 pages and you provide 20, we're not even going to look past page 15. So if important information that would have maybe resulted in a better evaluation and perhaps a select that was on page 19, it's not going to be seen because we're not going to consider that. But disqualifying wise, you need to make sure that you're hitting those minimums per the solicitation. Another specific to phase 2s are having the MOU. You need to have that customer MOU signed by both the customer and end user in order to qualify for a phase 2 SBIR award. If you don't have the MOU, you cannot receive a phase 2. In addition, that MOU is not just any letter of support. It is not a template that you provide. This is a template on the solicitation. You need to use what we provide to you for the MOU. And then as far as the customer and end user signature, you have to have both. Yeah, it is normally two different people signing that. In the cases that are rare cases where the customer is the end user, you would have that person sign twice. And that is done on purpose, and that is stated within the solicitation to make sure that the correct person is signing. Just to hit on customer and end user, the end user, you can consider the warfighter who is using the product, and the customer is who is acquiring the product or the program office. So A good example would be the F-16, the pilot or the maintenance officer, that's the end user, and the program office that is in charge of modifying or acquiring the F-16s, that would be your customer. So in some cases, for example, research labs, they tend to have both the customer and end user. So they're procuring the product as well as using the product. In that kind of case, you would have that person sign twice on your MOU, but make sure that there are two signatures, typically two different people, but if not, the same person signing two times, and make sure it's on the correct template. All right. Next, we're going to move to our post-award onboarding, and I'm going to hand this over to Vanessa. Vanessa, if you can talk us through what companies can expect once they have not just their select, but also their award and their contract in hand.
Thanks, Amanda. So the companies will be notified officially with a signed copy of the contract along with onboarding documentation. Inside that email, it'll come via email. Inside that email, you will have all the information it'll cover all the information that you can expect to see during the period of performance, including an onboarding form. Here, this is where we collect all the information and it autofills into a database that we use to execute your contract throughout the period of performance. So for phase one, and you receive that email, you fill it out. You will have phase one is simple compared to phase two because phase one, every contract has the same two CLINs, and that are two deliverables, a project update slide, and a PowerPoint slide for your final report. Also, we ask in phase one that you accept the invitation to Union, right? This is our information platform, and we'll give you a demonstration later. And it's specific to the phase one community for your solicitation. Here you'll find all the information needed to execute throughout the 3 months. Also, there'll be weekly calls. You'll be invited to a kickoff meeting or onboarding meeting where we walk you through all the details of what to expect and how to navigate Union and the period of performance. Phase one, you do not have a TPOC. Technically, according to the contract, it would be our phase one lead. So you might see Zoe Walters or Ryan Erickson listed as your technical POC, but the execution team can answer any questions and help you as we go forward. Phase two, you will be emailed in a similar manner. Contracting will provide you the onboarding information. We ask you complete the form. Again, pay attention to the data that you are inputting. Make sure that you focus on your proposal number and your contract number are going to be different. Again, this autofills our database. This is how we track every email that comes through. This is how we track all our deliverables and ultimately how our funding is executed. We ask that you accept the invite to Union. If you were part of phase one, you will have multiple platforms and I'll give you the opportunity later to show you how to change your community. You'll be in the phase two. Our phase two community will have every cohort inside. So if you could imagine 20.1, 20.3, 21.1, you'll have a handful of companies inside that may have had the same questions you had. You can easily navigate some of the discussions and look for issues that might be pertaining to your company or your contract, and the answers might be there for you to resolve. We ask that you attend, actually it's mandatory that our companies attend the AFVentures kickoff meeting. This is where you will meet the team. This is where they will help you navigate all the new additions that phase two requires compared to phase one. It is up to the companies to coordinate a kickoff meeting with the TPOCs and the key stakeholders. This is important because this is where you're going to get your support. The TPOCs, as Amanda mentioned earlier, are the tactical level, the base level, the warfighter, but those key stakeholders, which would include their leadership, the commander, decision makers, legal if needed, and other staff functions. This is where you'll be able to touch base with them and understand what is needed throughout the period of performance. For phase 2, our TPOCs, we ask that you verify, we're going to ask that you verify the contact and unit information. This is important for our database as well. And we ask that you accept the invitation to union. This is optional for government, but there's a lot of good information in there, and it's also a great way to connect, to make connections and build your network, as well as gain information that your companies have access to that would be helpful. We also ask, as of now, we do not have official training for the TPOCs, but we're working on building a training platform so that we can help our government users get the best understanding of what to expect during a SBIR or STTR. And also any additional training that might be applicable to your contract, so contract specific. And we ask that you attend our AFVentures kickoff meeting as well. This past solicitation, we had one specific to TPOCs, but I'm not sure if we're going to keep doing that moving forward. But for a kickoff meeting, if we could do that together, you will understand all the information we're giving our companies, and it'll be very beneficial for our government users and what to expect during the period of performance. All right, any questions, Amanda?
Well, that was great. Do you want to go over the deliverable submission?
Sure. So submitting deliverables, this, if we as a team fail to submit our deliverables correct the first time, it does create a delay in our execution. So it's a team effort here. We rely on the companies, right? So for phase 1, we rely on our companies to submit that preliminary report and your final report. Again, those are the 2 CLINs that fall under our phase 1 for every company. So we actually have this set up. It's streamlined. It's fairly easy. You go to Union, you click on a link, it opens up a narrative. Inside that narrative, you will find another link, and it's a Google form. You fill it out, upload any documentation that's required, and you hit submit. Easy. So we, on the back end, the execution team takes over. We verify the delivery date, the contact information. Again, this is where it's important that your company name, if your company name changes, a modification needs to be completed. If you use a pseudonym, which we had an issue, a company had 3 different names listed this week on all their documentation, and we couldn't, it took us 2 days to figure out who the right company was, if the information was correct, the correct contact. So it's important that you use the company name listed in the contract. It auto-populates our form, we verify everything, and then we send you an acknowledgement email. This is where the team goes through and we acknowledge that we received your deliverable, which would either be your preliminary report or your final report. And we, if you receive an approval, then you go forward with wide area workflow, and all the details are outlined in an email that we provide you. Please do not submit an invoice before you receive that acknowledgement email, because it will not be approved until our team sees that that you've received that. Also for phase 2, very similar. However, compared to phase 1, you have 2 deliverables. Phase 2 is again contract specific. So if your period of performance is 18 to 24 months, you may have quite a few. So this is important that all the documentation is in place. The company will email the completed deliverable and any applicable items to the TPOC. The TPOC then acknowledges, yes, we received this milestone or deliverable was met. And it's also include our execution mailbox. So we see that you 2 are communicating, right? And then finally, the execution team, we go through, we verify all the information is correct. Then we send you an acknowledgement email of approval. At this time is when you can submit the invoice and wide area workflow. So again, team effort here. We rely on the companies to put the information correct, the TPOCs to understand what they are accepting. And again, TPOCs, make sure you're comfortable with that deliverable or milestone that you're approving. If you're not, this is where communication with your company is important. And ultimately, this is how they're getting paid, right? All right. That's what I have here, Amanda.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Another example here for submitting deliverables for phase 2. Here is the template for subject and message body that you can use when you email those deliverables to your TPOC where applicable, and then also to AFWERX. So this is the address that is specific only to accepting the deliverables from phase 2 companies. To note that you can submit multiple CLINs on a single invoice, and then the government has 30 days to accept invoice payment.
Amanda, can I add on that last slide? Can I add a comment? So this is a main source of contention. This is a very easy template. All you have to do is copy and paste out of Union. Do not steer away from this format. It's simple. We have companies or TPOCs that'll send us a narrative rather than just following the template. We've tried to set this up as easy as possible for all our members, and it helps us execute as quickly as possible as well.
Thank you for that point. Yes, when we give templates and we specify on Union the steps that need to be taken, those are the easiest steps. Don't make new steps, don't add steps, just do exactly what is laid out, and that will be the path to the quickest approvals and getting that payment. All right, so I know Vanessa had discussed or alluded to contract modification if necessary. For example, if you need to change your company name or address, something like that. So what is a contract modification? It is a written change in the terms of the contract. You can't just tell somebody, you can't just send an email. Your TPOC can't say, yes, I understand, you're good. Nope, it has to be in writing. Not only that, but only the contracting officer has the authority to make changes and execute contract modifications on the behalf of the government. So a TPOC cannot make a contract change, a commander can't make a modification, a program manager, no one except the contracting officer has the authority to make a contract change. If someone does, for any government individuals out there, if you are authorizing additional scope or work without the contracting officer approval, processing the contract modification, that is called an unauthorized commitment. So if a company goes forward and starts doing additional work or has added scope that can add additional costs to the US government, and you're not the contracting officer who made that modification, then you can be personally held liable for the resulting costs of that additional work or scope. So companies don't put government individuals in the awkward position of potentially getting themselves in hot water. And for government individuals, please be aware that you cannot make contract changes. There's a process. How do you follow this process? If you have something that needs to be a contract modification, the contractor, the company, will submit that request via Union. It then goes through the process, going to the appropriate contracting officer and specialist through our AFVentures program managers. And then the TPOCs will receive an automated email, and everyone together as a team will be able to kick off that modification discussion to make sure all the needs and requirements are met, and that the contracting officer is able to make the appropriate changes to that contract. So some quick notes here. You do not need to request a contract modification for a delay of a deliverable that is less than 30 days. If it is extended beyond 30 days, you can request a contract modification. And you can also submit a deliverable early without needing a contract modification. You can also submit deliverables out of order without a contract modification as a general rule of thumb. So if you're extensively changing the scope and what is happening, at the very least, you need to have a conversation with the contracting officer to make sure that you're covered and that you're good to go. A contracting mod can be easily executed. It's better to question than to end up doing work that was not authorized. So TPOC modifications. If you are a TPOC, this is specific to phase twos. Let's just say government and military, we tend to move a lot. So if you PCS or PCA, if your responsibilities change, if you move to a different program, if you're no longer working a particular project that has that SIBR, you need to make sure that you are replaced on that contract and that the new TPOC is read in. So you need to, one, identify that alternate TPOC who's going to be stepping into your shoes as soon as possible. And then that phase two execution team needs to be notified immediately. Changing the primary or the alternate TPOC can be accomplished via the email. And then we'll return that email confirming the TPOC has been changed for the contract. So that just gets processed on our end. And the appropriate change is made. It's just a matter of notifying us so that we can change that on the contract. And then whoever is stepping into the role of TPOC as a replacement, you need to also acknowledge that new responsibility. And we have a memo that you would sign of the responsibilities that you would be undertaking, and then that contract modification is going to be made to list you. Again, that's specific for phase twos. For phase one, AFWERX is that TPOC on the contract. So if it goes to, if phase one is working with one particular end user, and then they start working with someone else, that's okay for phase one because AFWERX is that has that TPOC duty. For phase two, when the TPOC has all those additional duties and, you know, as Vanessa walked through the deliverable process for the approval of the deliverables, in order to assist with that, we are standing up TPOC training so that you are aware of the responsibilities and you know what it is that we're asking you to do as a part of this process. And so actually, before I move on here, I do have Lieutenant Colonel Iserman and Mike Pillar on here, who are contracting officer experts. I'm not sure if you guys would like to add anything to contract modifications or if there's any points you'd like to make on this.
Hey, Amanda, this is Michael Pillar calling in. So contracting officer that's supporting a lot of the AFWERX things. So if you needed an ear to bend, we're definitely a resource for the small business community, but also just wanted to put a finer point on the importance of having good comms with not just your technical points of contact, but also understanding that the contracting officer obviously wields a whole lot of responsibility for the execution of the contract itself. Because without a contracting officer, your idea remains just that, an idea. We have to put it on contract and codify it. But it's also to do two things. Number one, to look out for the taxpayers and the government's best interest, but also to look out for your best interest as a small business to ensure that people aren't taking advantage of or incorporating more scope than what was already initially agreed to in the front end. So if I could just put that little plug in there, get to know your contracting officer. Quite a bit of the contracting POCs, points of contact at AFRL, and the way that these contracts have been awarded previously, they tend to shift around quite a bit. So just understanding, during an initial kickoff or after the award and you're talking with your TPOC, ask the simple question of who is our contracting officer in case we do have issues with billing or deliverables or even a modification, like the periods of performance need to be changed. And just take time to care about that business side as well, because that's exactly who that contracting officer is representing. They're the business advisors to the technical points of contact. Other than that, that's all I had. But I appreciate you letting us chime in here.
Thank you, I appreciate that. All right, I'm going to move on now to customer discovery and focus area matching. If you've tuned into previous webinars, this won't be new to you, but for those of you who have not or who have an award and are kind of wondering how to go about making connections within the government. One easy way is through focus areas. So the SIBR open topic is solution and technology agnostic. However, in order to drill back down to specific problem sets and use case scenarios, we have the government and Air Force users putting in their focus areas. So you can go to this address. It's on the AFVentures, on the AFWERX website. Under the AFVentures, you can scroll down on the overview and get to the focus areas. And this is where you can filter and search through, read the different technology focus areas and what people are asking for from the government that perhaps you as a small business would be able to fulfill that capability gap. So if you do find a focus area that excites you, that you think that you can provide a solution for, there is a button that says contact us. You would fill that out. You would name the focus area number that you are interested in. And then when you send that off, it goes to our team and it also goes to that focus area owner. We will be bulking this up. We'll be adding additional searches, making this tool a little bit more easier to use, but it is there right now. And it is the first step that we are taking in creating a larger matching database. So how do you find the customers? Reach out via the focus area page to connect with focus area owners. You can also go to a site that's airforcetechconnect.org. It's very similar and it has different use case scenarios and problem sets listed on this website that you would be able to reach out to as well. As you're doing your customer discovery, this is specific really for phase ones that are in that feasibility study who don't yet have that customer end user to take to a phase two. Make sure that as you are reaching out, whether it's LinkedIn or email blasts, don't mass email, choose your audience. Make sure that the person that you're trying to connect with is the right person. And you can do this by being specific. If you show you read the focus area, you introduce your particular capability to solve the listed capability. Show that you have read what their need is and that you understand it. You can also, from the focus area research, show that you understand similar issues and issues across the force and know how your particular technology or solution is fitting in to what your research has shown are problem sets within the Air Force. So as you're reaching out, perhaps the person you're reaching out to doesn't have a specific focus area per se, but you might understand things that could be a capability gap that they might have based upon the research that you're conducting with the focus areas that we have. And then just want to point out, you should not send generic introductory messages to senior leaders like the SecDef or Chief of Staff, generals, SESs. Just because someone is senior ranking, that does not mean they can help you. Really, the people that you are trying to connect with who have the problems, who are really passionate about finding the solutions, who are interested in connecting with you as a small business, those are the guys and gals on the ground who are the operators and end users and the program managers. So those are the folks that you want to be reaching out to. And you want to be reaching out to them in a tailored way that shows that you understand what their need is specifically or what you think their need could be. So that is the recommended approach that we ask our onboarded companies to take when going through their customer discovery. So that being said, I'm going to hand things back over to Vanessa, who's going to talk through the Union platform and the different aspects that Union provides to the small businesses. So if you are already onboarded, Union might be a tool that you're already using. If you have a SIBR award and you have not signed up for Union, this can show you the benefits to being on that platform and why you should go in and register for it. And then for the companies that are not yet a part of the SIBR crowd, then this kind of gives insight as to what you could expect if you are to receive a SIBR Sitter award in the future. So over to you, Vanessa.
All right, Amanda, I'll talk through this slide as you disconnect, and I'll share my screen. So as we mentioned, Union is our information platform. This originally came about, we started using Union as the AFVentures team recognized that companies didn't have access to government networks, and there were limitations in sharing information. So we started using Union. It's been a great platform to share information, to execute our operations, and also create a network for companies and our technical POCs, our government users. So here I am showing you our phase 2. Again, it is, if you are on any sort of social media or even LinkedIn, very similar. It's easy to navigate and straightforward. We try to keep a lot of the junk out of there and keep it productive to our operations. So over here on the left, you have the managed community. If you have multiple solicitations, or you're a company that has been a part of multiple cohorts, you will just simply select what you want to be a part of. So again, you see we have several communities. On the left here, offers, you can click on people. This is where, when you get the invite, you will build out your profile. This is for all the companies. This is for all our users, all our government team members are on here. The easiest way to reach, if you don't have contact information for our team, you can reach us here. Just send a message over here in the right corner, or you can click on our name and it'll take you to our profile. Another great thing, this is a wonderful marketing tool for our companies. Again, you build out the profile. You can add employees. Right, as you go through, we have units that have their own page in here to connect or to manage any contracts they are working with. Because when you go back to home, this is where we have all our information. So to the right, under community information, you can see we break everything down, including the onboarding. So for some reason, if you missed or misplaced that onboarding document, you can come here and you can find everything that is needed. And this is how simple we've set up this operation so that we can manage multiple contracts and companies. Sorry. There we go. All right. Now I can get back. Sorry.
Do you want me to throw slides again, or?
Yeah, please. I lost the lost it. Sorry.
If you can stop sharing your screen, I'll be able to drive again.
Okay. I'm trying, Amanda. I'm sorry. Stop share. There we go.
There we go.
All right, so and the best thing about Union is we give step-by-step information for everything. We give contact information. So if you have a wide area workflow question, invoicing question, we have all that posted there. We also go into details concerning modifications and any information that you might need. So we ask that you use this as a resource during your executions if you have any questions. Another great tool, like all social media outlets, is we have a discussions area where you can post a question, or if you have a question, say the MOU, you could go to the search at the top of the page, type in MOU, and look at all the previous discussions that were brought up concerning that topic, and hopefully find an answer. We do find that companies help each other out. They utilize their experience, and they share with other companies in areas that could be useful. And we hope to build our military community, our government users as well, so they can pull the amount of information, whatever information they need, and use it as a resource to communicate with their companies.
Yes, actually, that's one of the big benefits to Union is oftentimes the conversations between the small businesses, they help each other out and tend to answer questions before our team is even able to pipe in. So here are some slides that just show snippets of the union platform. So when when the webinar is posted and the slides are posted, you can see more of the information without having that live walkthrough. So we have the discussion posts and community information that walk you through the steps that you need to take in order to submit deliverables, do invoicing, adding other members to union. So everything that you might potentially have a question on should be answered here under community information. And if not, you're able to take to the discussion forums and pose a question either to the community or to our team.
Right. And also I'd like to add, if you are a union member, if you are inside our communities and you see incorrect information, let us know. Or if we need to clarify any specific area, let us know, because we want to make it as usable as possible with the most relevant information.
Absolutely. So up next, I'm going to talk about colliders. I know we've discussed this last week, but once you are onboarded, this is specific for our phase 1 companies. What we're trying to do is assist in that feasibility study and finding that customer. So as you're going about your customer discovery on your own, reaching out to people, looking at focus areas, what we also do each round of a solicitation is take that phase 1 cohort for SBIR and STTR companies and hold a spark collider. So essentially what we're trying to do here is facilitate the customer discovery and make connections at scale. So one-stop shop where multiple people will be able to show up, and on the government side, government's able to connect with industry and awarded phase 1 companies. And then the phase 1 small businesses are able to have conversations with government individuals who might be representing a larger team or program office. So our hypothesis here is by having a mechanism to allow companies to showcase their solution, and where government can be the audience, we will increase the likelihood of a successful phase 1 feasibility study. So what is a successful phase 1 feasibility study? Well, that's finding your customer and end user match that is willing to sign that customer MOU and help take you to a phase 2. Again, like we discussed earlier, you cannot get a phase 2 award if you do not have that customer MOU. So the importance here with the colliders is when we look at the fact that now with the open topic and the way that AFWERX is approaching the SBIR and STTR program, 70-75% of companies that receive a phase 1 contract have never done business with the DoD before. So small businesses that have no government experience, they don't necessarily know where to start. They don't know what unit to go to. They don't know the organization of the DoD. Perhaps they are under the impression that if they reach out to the highest ranking general, that they'll be able to get a match and get a contract. And they just don't understand that that's not how it works. It's really about making these connections at that working level. So putting everyone in the same room is where we're trying to facilitate the matches. Now, in the COVID world, this has been a little bit more difficult because of the virtual environment, and it's hard to really meet people and shake hands. But as the world starts opening up, we are looking to start hosting in-person colliders once again, and hopefully that's something that we can look forward to perhaps in the fall, and maybe if not then, hopefully next year. Now, the last little bit I'm going to hit on here before we move into our questions is testing and regulatory stipulations. So AFWERX does not approve classified proposals. So we don't have classified focus areas, and we don't accept the classified proposals. But if you go to this last bullet, if on that contract or your customer that you're matching with, you need to have access to classified data in order to do your R&D. If you need access to classified systems or facilities, then you would go through the standard process of putting forward a DD form 254, and that would be worked through the local IP shop and security office for the customer or end user that you are working with. So that security office We'll be coordinating with AFWERX to help draft that DD 254, but it goes through the standard process that would be used for any other contractor in government to be able to access classified data. As far as CAC cards, the AFVentures team now has capability to sponsor the CAC internally. So that's one thing. Not every contractor, not every small business is going to need a CAC. But for those who might, in order to access certain systems or facilities, then that conversation can be had with our team, and then we can work towards that end. And then as far as an ATO, so what is an ATO? It's the authority to operate, and it's required for any technology that is connecting to an Air Force system or is touching Air Force data and information. So the majority of SBIR awards don't have a need to reside on an Air Force system, and they're not necessarily touching the Air Force data directly, so they're not requiring an ATO. However, for those of you that might be near this line or not sure if you're crossing this threshold, you can have a cyber assessment completed by the local cyber office that works with your customer and end user and determine whether or not you need an ATO. If an ATO is required, a phase one is not really going to be worrying about any of these. Really, you have a 3-month period of performance. You can't get through these processes in that period of time. You're really just trying to find your customer match. But for the phase twos that have that customer and end user and are trying to do prototyping and work and provide a product to the Air Force, then you're going to want to work through these systems. And so for an ATO specifically, the cyber assessment, if you need the ATO, then you'd start working through that process. If you need the DD 254 for accessing classified data, you work through that. I think the main takeaway here is the local customer and end user shops, their security support, their cyber support, they're the ones that will be shepherding you through this process. But the AFVentures and AFWERX team is always here standing by, ready to assist or answer questions as needed. So with that, now at our questions time. I think we have about 10 minutes remaining. Let me see here if I can access. I don't think I can access the Q&A while I'm throwing the slides, but are there any questions out there that we can touch on and answer live?
I will bring up a few, Amanda. So we've had several questions about the MOU required for phase two. It is a requirement. It must be signed by TPOCs end users. So all the applicable areas that are inside that MOU template. The templates do vary. So make sure that you have the most recent template and it will be available. We put that on Union for you. And it is required for a phase two proposal submissions as part of the package.
Right, exactly. So for the phase one companies, getting to a phase two is done in 2 separate avenues. If you have a phase one award, then you have a separate solicitation specific to your awarded cohort to go from phase one to phase two. For those companies that are on Union and a part of the phase one cohort community, we'll provide that MOU template that is required for your solicitation on Union, and it will also be a part of the solicitation. For companies that are not a phase one and are already connected to an Air Force or DoD user and are going direct to phase two, skipping over that phase one process because they have their customer and match in hand, the solicitation for direct to phase two, that has the MOU for that specific solicitation. And like Vanessa said, solicitation to solicitation, that MOU template could change. So make sure you're not using something that's out of date. Don't take something that your customers or end users providing to you. You take to them the MOU template that is provided within the solicitation. That's the way that you can make sure that you're meeting the solicitation requirement and that you're not having a DQ for something silly like having the wrong MOU template.
Great. We also had a question about from Sammy. Is there any possibility to remedy a clerical problem that leads to not selectable? We were initially selected, fundable, but were deemed not selectable. How do they fix this problem? Or since they fixed the problem, how do they resubmit?
Right. So unfortunately, as a solicitation calls out the specifics for eligibility, by having a disqualifying factor such as, you know, the inappropriate SAM registration, that's an unfortunate clerical error that can't be remedied in this solicitation round. When that error is fixed, you can apply to the next solicitation, and I mean, hopefully you would be select again and able to proceed forward. I understand that that's a frustrating position to be in, and our team is looking at options of changing future solicitations or processes so that a clerical error such as that could be amended. But right now, that is not the case. So any type of disqualification that is found, such as the SAM registration, would have to be fixed, and then with that fixed status, then putting forward another proposal. So you would propose again to the next solicitation.
Thanks, Amanda. We also have we've had two questions about, my goodness, anything concerning foreign nationals. That will be outlined in the BAA. So if you go and visit the site, and I'll put it in the chat, it'll outline any foreign national students, right? If you're part of a research team, or also employees, everything will be outlined in there, again, specific to the solicitation.
Exactly. And in the past, typically, it will require you to call out who is a foreign member, or what section of a company is perhaps a foreign team. And so that would have to be disclosed in the proposal. But again, look at the solicitation, what that is specifically asking for as far as disclosure with foreign nationals. Of course, the SIBR program is for US companies, or US majority owned companies. So I do know that some foreign companies create US subsidiaries that hold, you know, 51% of the company so that they can qualify for this program. But then of course that foreign holding would have to be disclosed. All right, let's see.
I'm looking.
I'm also looking at the chat. See if there's anything in here. I know that if people are writing in the chat box, please put questions in the Q&A. That way they can be recorded, and any questions we don't get to today, then we'll be able to answer in the background and then post the Q&As to the website. All of this is being worked on. This is a new weekly webinar series, so we're getting this up and running and standing this up in the back.
So we also have a question from Lynn. I was curious how long it normally takes to process a contract modification, and if we really need to, as there is no real impact to our project except for a delay. Do one of our contracting experts want to answer that or emphasize modifications?
I'm not sure if Colonel Iserman or Mike are still on the call. I know that they had another meeting to go through. I'm not sure if any of them stuck around.
So I'm here, and so if so, this is Michael. So real quick, just to make sure everybody's, you know, it doesn't hurt to have contracting modifications, mainly because that is how the Air Force and the federal government decide what is and what is not allowable underneath the contract. So for protection purposes, for both the business, your business, as well as the end user, those certain terms, if there's a change in them, to get them codified in a document is really not a problem. The contracting officer that's going to be executing the modification can, if it's a timely thing, meaning like you've requested it and you're awaiting a response, those types of things can be answered via email with a modification to follow, possibly. This is just an example. But if the contracting officer, should be willing and able to do what it takes to get that modification done. Like I said, if not just for to ensure everything is covered, it's just to have a written agreement that's more or less. And depending on who the contracting officer is, that could be as simple as just like, confirmation through an email with modification to follow. But I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Thanks. Looking at the chat here, I see some people are asking specifics to their company. If you are trying to find out information on the status of your proposal, reach out to our team and maybe we can see if we can get you a status update from a contracting officer. One of the things that we are working on to make a more transparent process is just keeping companies informed as we're going through the award cycle on the contracting sprints in order to allow you to know what's happening instead of just being a surprise, here's a contract. So that is something that our team is working at, creating a better process with more transparency. Right now, I can't advise as far as a specific proposal that was submitted and the status, but you can write to our team and we can see if a contracting officer is able to answer that question.
We do have somebody asking for the phase 1 and phase 2 execution team members. So at some point, most of our AFWERX team, they assist or have a hand in the full execution. If you'd like to privately send me a message, maybe I can get you more information.
Amanda and Vanessa,
Yes.
this is Mike Malinsky. I had a couple of questions that I answered concerning technology readiness level and whether something is a R&D effort in the focus area open topic or not. And essentially, my phone's ringing, I can't get to it. Essentially, when the focus area author puts their focus area together, they determine whether they need something that's a TRL level 1, which is an R&D type effort, white paper, or something of a higher TRL level, something like a 6, which is a prototype, or something like TRL level 8 or 9, which are something that they've already developed, that they've used in the private sector, that's being used in the field, that the Air Force would like to turn into something that the Air Force can use, essentially. So to answer some of the questions that were coming out there, when the focus area author enters their focus area into the API platform, they choose their TRL level, which means this is the type of technology or the level of technology they're looking for. So those that will be looking on in the future and looking at the AFWERX website to access focus areas, in the future, they'll be able to see which TRL level they're looking for. That's already part of the process that we ask the focus area authors for, but that's just a little bit of information out there.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
I see other questions in the chat and I know we're at time now. So Vanessa, it looks like there's a phase 1 contracted company that hasn't received a union invite. If you could help them out after this.
Yes, ma'am. I'll take that down, but I do want to mention that for 21.1, we start onboarding on Friday. We have not sent invites at this time. So we are aiming for Friday afternoon to send a bulk invite out to all our companies.
So if you haven't received anything by Monday, then I'd say reach out to our team, but it sounds like hopefully you'll be getting something in your inbox here on Friday. Since we are at 1 o'clock and I want to be timely and respect other people's commitments, we will be ending this panel. I see that there are a lot of Q&As in that section that have not been answered live. What we are doing is we're collecting these And we're going through all the questions. They will all be answered. The slides will be posted. The webinar recording will be posted as well. And so when that is all done on the back end and through the different processes that we have to go through, anyone who is registered for this webinar, you will receive an email with a link to that information. So if you didn't have your question answered here and you're waiting on an answer, you'll be able to see that in the future. So we're not avoiding the questions, that will get back to you. And if you have anything in the meantime, you can reach out to our team, and you can also go check out the AFWERX website, afwerx.af.mil, and start looking at focus areas, start understanding a little bit more of the processes that are listed on the website. So thank you all for joining us today. Apologies, I've been keeping you about 2 minutes over. I hope that this was beneficial. And if as you leave this webinar, if you could answer the survey questions before you head on out, we would appreciate all the feedback that we can get so we can make this a better experience for everyone. Thank you very much for joining us out here.